What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be about the Necropolis Karina challenges. I wanted to make a full overview, a full guide on the Necropolis Karina challenges that just came out last week, right? It should have been last week. There are 5 runs available right now. I have completed all of them. There's a 6th and final one, but that is a deathless run, so I'm going to cover that in a separate video because that run is not available right now. So whenever that run comes to be, I will make a follow-up kind of concluding this whole deathless, or concluding this whole Necropolis Karina challenge run overview. So the initial 5 were already released and I've completed all of them, so the only thing left is to do the deathless run in January. But for the 5 accessible to everybody right now, I'm going to cover them in detail, cover them with my strategies and my thoughts, my opinions. If you didn't already know from a video I made a little while ago, I did have a hand in some of these runs. I was responsible for picking the tags for the Dimensional Being run, so that came to be because of me, and I also offered some suggestions and advice to other runs that ended up making it through. So yeah, I am a small portion of this. I'd say, like, if I were to quantify it, it'd be like 10% of the help and assistance came from me because I don't have all the QA tools and accessibility, but I did test my own run and I did help out with some other stuff. So let's just get right into it. I think I'm going to start with what I recommend for most people as the easy path. That is the full mutant team down the Sauron lane. So I ran with the following team, and I recommend most people to do something similar. If not, follow another trend. I'll talk about that in a second here. So I think the mutant run is by far the easiest run. You have essentially every tool you could possibly need for countering characters on this lane. I opted to go for the Professor X Apocalypse route. If you are the owner of a highly ranked 7-star Colossus, he can easily crush it. I know Sweeta made a video about going through this lane with Colossus, and I know he is incredible for it. So Colossus is also a great option if you have the full synergy team and he's at a high rank, rank 2, rank 3, 7-star is ideal. But if you don't rank up Colossus, this is definitely what you want to do. Alternatively, Onslaught is for sure the best attacker outside of Colossus for this. I'd say they're probably neck and neck because they can do essentially every single fight on the lane. I did test in an earlier in the year, I did do a practice run of this concept with just Onslaught, and I was able to get it down with just him. So, of course, I had a synergy team supporting him, but Onslaught doesn't really gain too much of a benefit from synergies. It's really just Onslaught himself that gains all the power. So, I used my rank 3 7-star unduped Onslaught for 6 out of 8 of these fights. And I used my 7-star rank 3 unduped Professor X for 2 fights. I used Professor X for Sauron, and then also Hit Monkey, that just ramps the Cerebro charges up. And then from America Chavez all the way to Psycho Man, I ended up using Onslaught. And I kind of tag teamed America Chavez because this team is not the best for taking out Chavez. It's not super geared for it, but you can get her down, and you can do it relatively cheaply if you play well. Now, some of these runs can be done itemless. I just uploaded an itemless run of the full path, and there are other itemless runs on YouTube. I think Sweeta is the person who's been uploading a couple of those for some of these runs. Some of these runs you cannot do itemless, but for a good portion of the runs, you can do them itemless with the proper team. So, and this run is one of them. But if itemless is not your goal, like some crazy people like myself and Sweeta and other people like that, then this team is probably your best bet. And if you don't want to run Professor X, I highly recommend replacing Professor X with Mr. Sinister. So if you don't know, Mr. Sinister got buffed recently, and a lot of people have him as a 7-star now. Mr. Sinister with the Apocalypse synergy for the increase to his degeneration damage is actually a very solid attacker in Necropolis. So if you're not looking to run Professor X, I highly recommend you build this team for the mutant run. I'll show you right now. You're not going to run double Onslaught like me. You're going to run Onslaught, a singular Onslaught, Mr. Sinister, Apocalypse, and then you have a lot of leeway. You could either drop some white Magnetos and put like Professor X in for a single synergy, or you could run the double Magneto like I decided to do for the maximum guidance bonus. But the Mutant run overall, definitely the easiest. It is the entry level run, at least in my opinion, because it requires the least amount of perfect roster. It's more of just if you have a general collection of these very good characters, you can get it done very easily. So that is the Mutant run. I'm going to move on now and talk about what I consider to be probably the second easiest run, and that is the Gods and Culls Worthy run. Now, I will say that this run has a little asterisk by it for being the second easiest, as it is very easy for this run to become very challenging, and I'll explain why in a second. So this is the team that I brought for the Culls Worthy run. I did this run in 0 revive, so I'll cover all the costs of what I did. The Mutant Path I did in 1 revive, should have been 0, but I made an honest mistake, and I'm not going to lie to you and say I didn't. The Culls run I did in 0 revives. You can do this one itemless as well, but I figured I might as well just use some potions because I was doing it live, and I don't need to hyperfixate on everything when I'm doing things live. It's okay. So this team was able to get me through in 0 revives, and I will say that Enchantress is absolutely a hidden MVP for this run. I should have used her a lot earlier on a lot more fights because I probably could have inadvertently done it itemless if I focused on using her a lot more, because she is incredible for Necropolis, especially at the 7-star level. I think the 6-star is really going to struggle to punch up because you're going to run out of time by the time you get ramped. But if you have Enchantress at all, I highly recommend 7-stars specifically. That's really what I'm referring to here. Highly recommend you take her up. Rank 2 is totally fine. You don't need her more than rank 2. I personally like Enchantress, so I have her at rank 3, but you absolutely will get essentially the same results from a 7-star rank 2 Enchantress. She can do, I believe she can do Vision Arcus, Airwalker, Captain Britain, and Wiccan, and she might also be able to do Psycho Man as well. But she is absolutely incredible for it, so I highly recommend you rank her up if you have her. And then 2 other characters that are insane for this content are Odin and then Serpent. I have Odin at the 7-star rank 2 level and Serpent at the 7-star rank 3 level. Odin was able to solo Titania for me, as well as Captain Britain and Psycho Man. And then, what's his face? Serpent was able to solo. No, I'm sorry. I misspoke. Odin was able to solo Titania and Captain Britain for me, whereas Serpent was able to solo Omega Sentinel and Psycho Man. And then Enchantress and Hulk tag teamed Mr. Wiccan over here, and then I used Absorbing Man for Vision Arcus and Airwalker. So I don't think Absorbing Man is necessary for this run, but I personally liked using him. He's extremely safe for Airwalker, and as long as you play well, he's very safe for Vision as well. But you could easily run Enchantress for those fights and get a very similar result as long as you're playing adequately. So I highly recommend this team specifically for the Cull Gods run. If you wanted to run somebody like Hercules, I guess you could, but you're really not going to see too much use from him compared to champs like Odin and Serpent. And the Hulk that I have here could have easily been swapped for Titania. I know Titania can actually solo Wiccan. I didn't know that before, but yeah, I think a fully boosted rank 3 Titania can solo Wiccan. It might be pushing it a little bit, but I know from a reliable source that you can get this Wiccan down with Titania with relative ease. So if you don't want to use Hulk, you can absolutely use Titania for this Wiccan, and there will be really no problems with that. But the Cull Gods run, I think, is the second easiest overall. I think I'm going to go in terms of difficulty, like what is the easiest to hardest run overall, and we'll just keep that trend going because I've already gone 1-2. I might as well just go for the rest of them. So that is the Cull Gods run. Now I'm going to show the third easiest. It's more so like dipping into the hardest runs now because the first 2 I consider to be pretty straightforward and pretty easy with the right team. The remaining 3 are, not as easy. It definitely requires a bit more effort and knowledge than the first 2 runs. But I think the third easiest one is the Karina's Challengers run. So I'm going to get that right here. I think that's the third easiest, and I will explain why in just a second here. So this run is right down the Jubilee lane. So if you weren't already aware, 4 out of 5 of the initial Karina challenges are half paths going down specific lanes. The Mutant run was Sauron to Psycho Man. The Calls run is Titania to Psycho Man. And now I'm talking about the Karina's challenges run, which is Jubilee to Sunspot. So Guillotine 2099 technically can solo 7 out of 8 of these fights. And that's not really exaggerating. She can absolutely destroy this entire lane. If I had a rank 3 7-star Guillotine, there's a non-zero chance I could do this lane basically itemless. But a rank 2 pushes it a little bit. So I did this lane in 1 revive. I completely messed up on Jubilee at the end. It should have been a 0 revive run because I didn't revive again for the rest of it. But soloing Jubilee, that's what you should do. I was live, so I wasn't going to put everyone through that process again. I was just going to keep going because I was already at the end. But if I weren't doing it live, if I were making a video about it, I would definitely get the solo first and foremost. Guillotine is incredible for, like I said, most of these fights. She can solo Jubilee, Immortal Abomination, Diablo if you like to use her, although I highly recommend bringing someone specifically for Diablo. You have the room for it, so you don't want to worry about wasting a soul on Guillotine. I brought OG Guillotine. You can bring champs like Void, and if you want to bring a champ like Howard the Duck as well, he is exceptional in here. And it's probably someone I should have brought over like a She-Hulk or maybe a Hawkeye. But it's alright. I did the run already, so it's no big deal. Guillotine solo Squirrel Girl. You need Guillotine at a fully ramped soul to solo Silver Centurion. Even if she's just rank 1, with a fully ramped soul, you should be able to get a Silver Centurion solo as long as you play well. So you absolutely need her for this. And then once you get past Silver Cent, you really don't need Guillotine anymore, because for Spider-Man 2099, you want to use Crossbones or Hawkeye, and I think Mole Man as well is very good for this Spidey. So you definitely want a character like that. I almost got Spidey down to 40% with 1 run, and this was with my 7-star rank 2 unduped Crossbones. So I know Andrew the Rough was able to solo the Spidey with his rank 3, I think Sig 180 or something like that, Crossbones. So yeah, Crossbones is incredible for this fight, and he's really good for just a lot of other fights on the path. He can take Swirl Girl, and he can take Sunspot if you have him at a decent enough rank and you're pretty good with Crossbones. You can do a lot. So again, this run is primarily Guillotine 2099. You want to ramp up on Jubilee to get your soul from the special 3, and then you want to use Guillotine for I-Bomb. Again, same thing, soul from the special 3. I used OG Guillotine for Diablo to reverse his healing, just to save Guillotine the strife of having to build up the soul to the special 3 while dealing with the regen. I used Guillotine for Squirrel Girl, got the soul. I used Guillotine for Silver Centurion, also got the soul. And then I ended up using Crossbones and Hawkeye for Spider-Man 2099, and that was a little tag team takedown. And then I finished off with using Guillotine for Sunspot. A lot of those fights that I used the Guillotine on, you could use Crossbones, specifically the Squirrel Girl, the Sunspot. Those 2 fights you could use either Guillotine or Crossbones, and probably some other characters would do pretty well. I know Howard the Duck is good for Sunspot, and he's probably pretty decent for Spidey as well. So this is the team I ran. I did not use She-Hulk at all, so you do not need her for this path. I don't think she's very useful for this run specifically. I love you, She-Hulk, but this run was just not really made for you. So I highly recommend bringing someone else in aside from She-Hulk. And if you just run this team that I'm running right now, you can probably bring in someone like Mole Man, someone like Warlock, Howard the Duck, and then you have a lot more of a well-rounded team for this run. But this run, really not that bad. You just need to have the team for it. And everybody who's Paragon and above should have a 7-star Guillotine now. So you should be able to do this with relative ease as long as she's, rank 1 boosted, or rank 2, rank 3 even, if you fancy that. So that is the Karina's Challenges run. Now we have the final 2, the harder runs, and again, this is like roster specific stuff. So I think this run is a lot easier if you have the right champs for it, but if you don't, then it would be significantly harder. So this is the 10-year anniversary pool. 10-year anniversary run down any path. You can do any full path of Necropolis with champions with the 10-year challenge tag. So I ended up going down the Titania and Apocalypse path. I used this team. I was able to do it itemless, and a couple of reasons why it works so well is because Wong is the best attacker in this entire pool. I'm surprised they even left him in. I understand why they left him in, but I'm very surprised that he was actually in the final release of this content. because of how notoriously powerful he is in Necropolis. But they were kind enough to give us Wong, so utilize Wong. If you have Wong, rank Wong to at least rank 2 and use him. He is going to be useful on literally any path you decide to go down. You can go down quite a few paths here. I wouldn't say every path is available to you, but you can go down probably at least 3 of them and find a relative modicum of success. So I went down the Titania APOC path. That is a modified easy path because the APOC path is not technically the easy lane, but Wong, with his Awakened ability, completely counters this node, so it makes it even easier to maintain your damage and keep up these spells for the entirety of the fight. Just to go through the fights, fight by fight here, because it is a full path, I ended up using Chilth for Titania, Wong for Arcus, Null for Omega Sentinel, Wong for Airwalker, Captain Britain, and Psycho Man. I ended up using Quicksilver for Wiccan. That was a nice solo. Very happy to have gotten that. I used Wong for Apocalypse. I used Chilth for Tigra. I used Wong for Hercules. I used Null for Captain America Sam Wilson. I used Quicksilver and then finished up with Wiccan for Dragon Man. I used Chilth for Captain America Infinity War. I used Wong for Nova, and I used Wong to solo the Grandmaster. So this run can be done itemless. I'm not the first person to do an itemless Necropolis path, and I probably won't be the last because it's nowhere near as daunting of a task as, let's say an itemless Abyss path was when it was released. Because there are options in this pool, and there are counters for the final phase. There are, I think, a handful of reverse control immune champions, 3 or 4. I'm not sure exactly how many off the top of my head, but there are a handful of champions to survive that phase 4 of Grandmaster if you need that help. So you're absolutely fine to bring them. There's no penalty. As long as they are the hashtag 10-year challenge, then you are totally fine. Looking at alternative teams, if we're just looking at the 10-year run tag here, let me pull it up. You definitely could run champions like Adam Warlock, Hulkbuster, Gamora. Vox is really good in here as well. Sentry I've heard decent things from, although I think he'd be a lot better when he's a 7-star. So there are definitely options, and you definitely don't have to run the team that I ran. But if you have these characters at similar or exactly the same rank, then you can find a lot of success running this team. Just to go over the ranks, my Quicksilver is the only rank 3 on this team. Everybody else is rank 2, except for Wiccan, who's rank 1. But Wiccan's only on the team for the Wong synergy. I did not actually use him to solo a fight or do anything aside from clean up one single fight. All I needed to do with Wiccan was finish off the last 3% of Dragon Man because I died with Quicksilver. But that was the only time I died on the run. So Wiccan, he served his purpose in that regard. But there are extremely generous characters in this pool. So you don't have to use my run to a T. You don't even have to use Wong if you don't want to. There are plenty of characters in here that are exceptional in Necropolis. Adam Warlock, Chilth, Hulkbuster, Null, Vox, Gore, so many great characters. So you don't have to use my run, but this is the team that I just ran for the itemless path. If you want to try to emulate that, this is the team I recommend going for. I want to clarify that when I started the run, my Chilth was unawakened, and then when I finished the run, I actually pulled her from a crystal. So Chilth does not need to be awakened. Actually, none of these characters really need to be awakened. Null is barely gaining any of the benefit because he's low sig. Wong, I'd say, out of everybody, feels it the most because you get to start with a spell of your choice, and the spell lasts longer. So if anybody benefits the most, it's Wong, but I have done an itemless Necropolis path in the past with an unawakened Wong, and I was absolutely fine. So it's just nice to have. It kind of speeds things up a little bit, but it is absolutely by no means required at all to do this run. And then Quicksilver, yes, he benefits, but again, you don't have to use Quicksilver. You can swap him out for Photon, or Adam Warlock, or Hulkbuster, or whoever you really fancy. Whoever you're comfortable with is what you should go for. So that is the 10-year challenge path. And now moving on to the final run, the hardest challenge, the challenge that I helped put together. That is the Dimensional Beings run. So this run is very hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to lie to you. This run is very challenging. So this run is going to cost you some items, maybe up until this back end lane here, the final 4 fights here. I was able to get through the first 3 fights without using any items, but then I ended up using a couple of revives and some potions on the rest of the lane here. But that was kind of by design. We needed one challenge that was not going to be itemless. You can do um, 3 out of 5 of them itemless, and then the Karina's Challengers one, if you have a high enough guillotine, you could technically, but because of that criteria, it doesn't really count, and it's not really grouped into the collective. But this one, you can't do itemless. I'm sorry, I guess it was kind of the design intent for there to be a very difficult challenge that was fair, but also required some item usage because, sometimes challenges can be really fun and have a unique design, and if items need to be forced because of a certain fight on the path, as long as it's not unfair, then that's okay. And none of this is unfair. You just have to play very well. This is obviously the Odin Sunspot path. This has the reverse controls trap node, and that makes things just ever so slightly more difficult because your controls are reversing every once in a while for 5 seconds after the opponent throws a special attack. So you can't prevent this by ability accuracy, and no champion here is immune to it natively. At least that's from my recollection. I don't believe any character in this pool is actually immune to it by themselves. I might be wrong, and I think I'm going to check right now just to make sure. But from what I understand, none of the dimensional beings are actually immune to inverse controls by normal means. I'm going to look right here. Yeah, none of the champions here are immune by normal means. So you're going to have to run it and pay attention and play well. So let me outline the strategy here. For this run, I used 4 single revives and 1 team revive. So if you want to round up and call a team revive 3, let's call it 7 single revives just for the sake of simplicity. I used Kushala to solo Odin. I highly recommend everybody do that. It's very easy to get a solo with Kushala on Odin. So no need to rush there. You don't even need to be boosted for it. It's just pretty simple. And then we get to the difficult fights. The first 2 fights here, Clairvoyant and Shang-Chi. Claire is very tough. Claire, you just have to dance around the reverse controls, and when she triggers death immunity, you cannot get hit or you will take an instant burst of all of your health. And you have to dance around her special attacks, her animations, and work around the inverted controls at the same time. So I used a mix of Kushala, America Chavez, and Future Ant-Man here. I was able to get her down in 1 run of each of them. In the past, I have done this fight with America Chavez, and I've gotten her down to around 25% health. So you definitely can get this done, and you probably can solo it. But for the most part, you're going to be running a couple of champions on this fight. Future Ant-Man is very good for it because of the power control. Kushala is good for it, especially if she's awakened, because the soul barb damage is enough to just slowly tick her down. And then Kushala, or America Chavez is great because she just has such raw damage. Now, one thing I want to mention is Spot. So I brought Spot solely for the sake of synergies, but this was when Spot was unawakened. If my Spot was awakened, I actually would have used him on Claire specifically, and then a couple of other fights on the path. He can get a lot of decent burst damage from that Sig where you get the Fury, and the instant rupture from each spot gained when hitting the portal block, that part of the Sig ability also comes into play. You can get some decent chunks of damage off of Necropolis health pools with this Sig in play as long as you block enough hits. I think my best attempt on my rank 2 Spot on my free-to-play account when I did this run was like 5% of her health in 1 single special too. So you can get a lot of damage from this. So Spot, I ran for the America Chavez synergy, which lowers the energy resistance of the opponent for each parallel dimension and buff on them. It's very nice for Chavez, just makes her hit even harder. But Spot also gains benefit from this, and if he's awakened, you can use him as kind of a brute force, brawler, nuke-S attacker. So you can use a lot of characters there. Shang-Chi, you could solo this fight with Cosmic Ghost Rider if he played into you perfectly, but assuming he doesn't play into you perfectly, Cosmic Ghost Rider is very good for this. Future Ant-Man is very good for this. Actually tag-teamed this fight with Cosmic Ghost Rider and Future Ant-Man, so I didn't end up using any revives here. That's just how good Cosmic Ghost Rider and Future Ant-Man are. They're insane for this content, even as 6 stars. Squirrel Girl, you can do with basically anybody. I just wouldn't recommend running Spot because of the bleed damage on block. But Future Ant-Man works. Kushala works very well. CGR definitely works, but you have to work around the purification of the armor breaks. And then America Chavez is also very good for this. And then Silver Centurion, I'd say this is probably the second hardest fight. might be the hardest fight because of how you have to play around it, but using Future Ant-Man, you can essentially lock this guy down and get him down in two to four revives, depending on how he cooperates. I personally like using Kushala for this fight, and I was able to get him down in, I think, one revive with Kushala. I had a very good run with my rank 3 7-star Kushala. This run would have been a lot easier if my Kushala was awakened, but you gotta play the hand that you're dealt, and my Kushala is unawakened, so just had to run with it. But she does work very well. If you're thinking, wait a second, he's immune to incinerate with the armor up. He's actually immune to shock and bleed, not incinerate. So Kushala can nullify the armor and place incinerates on him with the ignition buffs from the special one, no problem. So yeah, this fight is definitely tough, but it is manageable. And in this fight right here, I won't apologize to everybody who's ever done who has already done this fight or will do this fight in the future, because I acknowledge this fight sucks. I acknowledge this fight is not super fun, and I apologize for that. It was just kind of a part of the design process, and we couldn't really avoid this fight. It's just something we had to run through, and this would not have gotten past if it wasn't possible to do this fight without insane amounts of items. You can do this fight relatively cheaply as long as you play well. And I think the whole idea of this path, well, not I think, I'm telling you, the idea of this path for me was to make people play well with reverse controls flipping back and forth. I think that's something a lot of people need to get better at because it's only going to be more and more relevant in the future because reverse controls are not going anywhere. So getting people more comfortable with it was a goal of this, and doing it on an intense fight like Spidey is even harder, but it's also more rewarding because if you're playing into it, you're actually learning how to do it. So the best option here is without a doubt Future Ant-Man. I got this fight done in 3 revives with Future Ant-Man. That is after I took off about 12% of his health with America Chavez. Now, if you really wanted to, this is another reason why I think this is not as bad as it could have been. America Chavez at a rank 2 or a rank 3 level can heavy spam Spidey in the corner once he has built up some power gain for the entire fight. Up until the charges run out, you can just spam heavy, relic, special 3, spam heavy, relic, special 3, and you can get off around 20 to 30% per run. Now, I'm not saying every run's going to be the same. Spidey might be a little finicky sometimes, but I can tell you from experience of running this on my free-to-play account just recently, I was able to get off 25% with America Chavez, not even fully boosted, just doing the heavy in the corner, relic, special 3, rinse and repeat. So it is an option, and it honestly doesn't take that long. I think my highest run, which was 25%, took less than 7 minutes. So obviously, it's longer than most fights, but this is Necropolis. It is endgame content, and that's just an option you have if you don't want to run Future Ant-Man. You basically have to run Chavez, or you're going to have a very rough time here. So, huge disclaimer, you need at least one of them. I highly recommend Future Ant-Man because he's good for this entire lane, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense to leave him behind because of how powerful he is with the power control. He can do basically the hardest fights better than any other character on the team. So I highly recommend running Future Ant-Man here. And then Sunspot is just kind of a easy, hey, the run's over, just kind of get this guy down. No real issues there. But this is the team that I ran, and this is the team that I highly recommend. One thing I do want to mention is Purgatory will be a 7-star very soon. I believe when this video goes live, the banquet event starts in 3 days. So Purgatory will be a 7-star by the time this she will be a 7-star for the rest of her lifetime, and she will be able to be used in this run because she is a dimensional being. Purgatory is very good in this run at the 7-star level. She can handle fights like Claire, Shang-Chi, Squirrel Girl, Silver Centurion, and I think she can even do Spidey because, if memory serves me right, Purgatory's special 3 damage is a burst of direct damage, so that bypasses any sort of resistances. Yeah, this attack deals 4% of the opponent's max health in direct damage. So that's going to bypass the damage cap, bypass the resistances, or at least it should, in theory, bypass the damage cap. If not, it hits the damage cap every time. Whoop-de-doo, it's Purgatory. So she's actually very good for Necropolis. You can just cycle special 3s, and you're going to have a lot of fun in there with Purgatory. So if you wanted to run her instead of Spot maybe, or if you didn't have Cosmic Ghost Rider and you wanted to run Purgatory, she's absolutely a great replacement. But I think Future Ant-Man, Kushala, America Chavez, at least Future Ant-Man is necessary, and then Kushala, Chavez are definitely the two next best champions. And then CGR is obviously great. Purgatory will be great. Spot is okay for some fights if he's duped. And that's kind of it. You can use other champions, but I think the focus here is these are the best dimensional beings, and ranking these characters up is only going to do your account good because it's literally Kushala, America Chavez, and Future Ant-Man, some of the best characters in the entire game. It's not like I'm making you rank up your Captain America World War II. These are characters that are actually good. So, that is it for this video. Almost 30 minutes here, just crossed the 30-minute mark of just straight recording. So I'm going to take a sip of water after I finish this up here. And like I mentioned, when the Deathless run comes out, I'm going to stream that one live, and then I'm going to do a review of the Deathless run and which path I took, the strategies I used in that run, etc., etc. So again, thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, and I really hope you did, hit the subscribe button and the like button. It really helps me out, helps the channel out, and it gets the word out there that the content I'm making is stuff that people want to watch. Let me know if this run helped you, and if you need any more elaboration on specific paths or teams, let me know. Well, I guess paths would only be for the full run because the other paths are predetermined. But if you need any help with that, I'd be more than willing to jump into the comment section and help some people out. So thank you all very much again. I will see you all at some point soon, hopefully for another live stream. And yeah, take care. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.